Hey world, welcome to the RC Air Experience, episode number 13.
Yep.
13, perfect. Lucky 13. We made it past number 12. It's been a big goal of ours. And I'm Jonathan from the lighter side of RC. We've got Anthony from FPV Builds. And we've got a couple fellows from the infamous Dubro company. Because Dubro's been around forever. But we'll get back to those guys in a second. We have a couple announcements to make. Anthony, I'll let you take that away.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So this episode is actually sponsored by my store, which is www.fpvbuildsrc.com. I'm doing a discount for anybody who follows the podcast. So it will be the RC Air Experience. You put that in the promo code and you'll get 10% off. I'm also doing a discount for Memorial Day and 4th of July, the time in between those two. And the discount code for that is going to be 10% off as well. And that is going to be America is going to be the promo code in there. So that's pretty much it. The second thing is we're going to be doing a giveaway for episode 15. So episode 15, we're going to announce the giveaway. We're kind of pre-announcing it now. So if you're not following, subscribed, please do all that stuff. And I'll be giving away a foam airplane. I haven't decided what plane it is. And John's going to give away some stuff from his store as well. So it'll be very cool. So that's it. That's
awesome.
All I have. Thanks, John.
Perfect. So we've got Dubro here.
Yeah.
We are here. We are in the house.
So we've got Brian from Dubro. We've got Joshua from Dubro. I'll let you guys kind of introduce yourselves. Brian, why don't we start off with you and kind of explain who you are and maybe a bit about Dubro. And then after you're done, we'll flip to Joshua and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian Schiller, head of sales, marketing, R&D. I'm sure we can name off 50 other job titles that I do here at Dubro. I've been working here a little over 2 years now, but slight background on Dubro. We began in 1959. Wow. Dewey Broberg was the founder, so hence the name Dubro. Dewey,
very cool.
Broberg, Dubro. So, I mean, the company started, he made the quick clip connector for starting motors. And he used to rent a little bathroom, an old bathroom in a warehouse outside of Chicago. And he would make those things. Eventually, he quit his job and become Dewey retired. His son and daughters took over the company. They ran it for many, many years. In that time period, you also had the development of Dubro Fishing in 1982 and Pine Ridge Archery in 1997. So you have three companies under one roof. I mean, we've been in this location here in Wakanda, Illinois for, gosh, I think it's like 50 years now, 45, maybe somewhere in there. A majority of our products are made here in-house. One of our big things is plastic injection molding. So like your hinges, your prop spinners, the guys that like to fly their planes in the snow, the skis are made here, all in our injection molding machines. And then we actually have a lot of machinery here as well that does certain kinds of fabricating, like our push rods, believe it or not, come on big spools of wire, and they run through a machine that was actually designed by Dewey, David Gray, and guys like that. And we have a lot of machinery here that was developed just to make our products. It wasn't something that you went to the machinery store and was like, yeah, give me two of those, So these guys actually developed that stuff here. And, 98% of our products are made in the USA. If we can't make it in-house, it's sourced locally here. And there are certain things that we got to get overseas for specific reasons.
Right.
But for the majority, it's all quality made products. Obviously, we're celebrating our 65th year of business, so kind of hit that milestone this year, which is great. And since Dewey's son and daughters have retired, Brian Byczowski is now the owner. Who Brian worked here for 23 years before he purchased the business in 2020. And we're going strong as ever, so
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Very cool.
A lot of history here.
What would you say the bigger side of the business is? I remember you guys telling me, and that we met at the Toledo show in Ohio. It was awesome meeting you guys. I remember then when you told me about the fishing and archery stuff, and I didn't know that Dubro did that, right? Because obviously
Sure.
we're in the plane industry, so Dubro from that.
Right,
what do you
right.
think? What do you think is the bigger side of the business? Is it fishing and archery stuff, or is it the?
It's definitely still the hobby side of things. The hobby side is definitely the biggest part of the business. And it's when I say the hobby side, you got to remember too, like a lot of our parts are now used, which in drones. So you got a lot of government agencies purchasing parts from us, satellites, robots, and things like that, medical equipment. So,
Wow.
we all know it from being used in model airplanes and
Right.
model aviation. There are a lot of different other industries that use the parts there. So, I mean, for sure, with all that being said, that's still a big part. But I mean, more than likely, it's usually going into model airplanes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we get phone calls all day long. I've been using your product since I was 12 years old in 1964 or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? It's cool, because we have that relationship with our customers. And then not only that, but, you got a lot of younger crowd that, are purchasing ready to fly planes, and then they start going down the build rabbit hole, and they find Dubro, or they find us because they want to upgrade some parts, whether it be tires or whatever it may be. So it's kind of cool. You could, on any given day, you could probably talk to 3 to 4 generations of flyers or model aviation guys, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. Yeah. Josh, it's down to you, buddy. You look like a statue right there. You got to loosen up, or we're all friends here. It's good.
I know. No, okay. So I am just a humble brand ambassador for Dubro. I started out just humbly sharing the stuff that I know on YouTube. Nothing more. I'm terrible with a camera. And I'm still terrible with a camera. I'm much better with an X-Acto blade and a pile of glue and some sticks. Even still, I'm only a fair pilot. I can do some basic aerobatic maneuvers. But I'm really good at flying an airplane for the first time because I'm a very prolific builder. So if you want your airplane to get off the ground the first time, I'm your guy. But no, it's been a wild ride. I was introduced to the guys at Dubro through a mutual friend, Terry Dunn. They were looking for somebody to do more of their Dubro 101 series. So the Dubro 101 series on the Dubro website helps to the newcomer to the Dubro line of products, help them understand how to use, how to install, and maybe some of the nuances about how to do different things with the hardware that Dubro provides. So since I'm a tinkerer and I've been around the hobby since I was a very small kid, always very curious, and I build literally everything under the sun: gas, glow, electric, scale, sport, balsa, composite, foam. I mean, you name it, I build it, and I also crash it, which means which means that I repair a lot and I need a lot of hardware. So so it's a great partnership that that Dubro has trusted me with, that I can go around and help people and have a sense of humor. And I've seen people use Dubro products for all sorts of things, not just RCs. So like Brian said, there's lots of different applications, not just in the, the fun little toys that we have fun with on the weekends,
It's funny that you just said that. I literally used the little nylon hinges. I used those in a 3D print for a lid on like a thing that I printed for my son, like a little chest that holds Nintendo Switch games. The 3D printed hinge kind of like broke after like the second use, and I had some of those nylon hinges around, and I made a little slot in the plastic on both sides, glued them in. They work amazing. It's like, this is awesome. So
no, it's funny that my absolute favorite was, I was at an event and I was walking around doing the Dubro thing, and this guy shows me, "Oh, come on over, I want to show you this." He shows me his camping stove, and it's one of those folding Coleman camping stoves, and the hinge, he lost the pin for the hinge and he used a Dubro push rod.
Whatever works.
I'm on the site right now, and the number of 101 videos is nuts. Like, there's 4 pages of 101 videos. That's a lot. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, I didn't do all of those, so to be fair, I can't take all the credit.
Well, the one thing I gotta correct Joshua on, he said it's a lot for the newcomers, but there's a lot of old guys that are like, I don't remember how to use this. So it's like you direct them to that video, and it's great. I mean, that's a huge aspect when you're, because most of us are visual guys. It's easier to understand, or it's easier to explain when you can actually show what you're doing versus, here's the instructions, read these and, try to decipher through the code on what to actually do,
Yeah, for sure.
I always go back to stuff sometimes, even stuff I know how to do 10 years ago. I'll go back and revisit it. Josh, I did watch some of your videos on the one-on-one stuff, and they're very informative. You do a good job. So don't be modest. They're good, and it's good for the hobby, right? You're doing stuff that's helping people in the hobby. So.
And that's how I've always approached it. I've always wanted to be one of those guys that was approachable for, the person that's been around the hobby a whole long time, as well as someone that's new, and look, I'm just a guy that tinkers in my shop and I build stuff,
right?
And whether or not you have a lot of experience or you don't have any experience, there's no reason to think that you can't ask a question. And I'm a firm believer that there are no such thing as stupid questions. There are irrelevant questions or questions out of context, but there are no stupid questions.
Right.
I don't think that anybody should be ridiculed as a result of a question that they might have, or not be entitled to a reasonable answer for that question too. That's why I'm very transparent about my successes and my failures on my YouTube channel. It's like, okay, well, I want to try this new build technique, and you're going to find out everything that I did wrong so that you don't have to repeat my mistake. But at the same time, though, right, everybody has their own way of building. So it's not necessarily like the way that I build is the way that you should build.
Right. Do you get comments about that? Do you get hammered?
Oh, yeah. I've gotten comments in the past, well, you should be doing it this way. And I'm like, well, if that works for you, awesome. That's great. I've tried it. It didn't work for me. And if you find this helpful, that's great. And I think that's why my YouTube channel hasn't, taken off or blown up, because I'm not about controversy. I'm not a competitive person. I don't try to do too many clickbait videos. I do every once in a while, but at the same time, like, I'm just here to share what I know. I want to brain dump. I want to share.
Yeah. You have a little bit of an interesting background too, right? I don't know if you want to talk about that or not, but
I'm a guy.
Day job. You're a pretty smart egg, right? You're a scientist during the day.
Yeah, I am. So I work for Thermo Fisher Scientific. My background is in biopharmaceutical manufacturing and process development, protein purification, and virus clearance,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
is a mouthful.
I feel like I
But
need a PhD
it,
just to
it
say
makes me sound really smart, but there are people that are way smarter than me. Trust me. Uh, um, it it's a good job. I get to help people without touching patients and carrying malpractice insurance. What can I say?
Nice. Yeah. Being modest again.
So what's one of the questions I thought of before we started today was how often are you guys rolling out new things, new items, new products, and are those products a result of people asking for them, or is it just kind of something that you guys think of to help a problem, help us come up with a solution?
Yeah.
I would say on average nowadays it's a few items a year.
Mhm.
It all depends. A lot of it is the demand for something, things like that. Like it's no secret our quicksand hand sanders, that was something that Great Plains originally had. So since they've gone out of business, there was a lot of folks that were either calling, emailing, things like that, saying, hey, do you guys have something like this that we could do? So we ended up having that extrusion made, which is slightly different from what the Great Plains was. And we've come out with our own version. So you have instances like that, or it's a lot of it is demand, like Joshua, say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think we can
Mhm.
make this? And things like that. So, I mean, we're always constantly looking for new products, things to evolve, and things in our realm,
Yeah.
So, if it's a plastic injection molded part, like obviously that's right up our alley.
Mhm.
So I mean, we have some stuff currently in the works that mostly came from guys like Joshua and Terry Dunn and things like that. So um, it's like I said, we don't have like all right, this year we're going to release 20 new products. Next year we're going to do 20 and something
Yeah.
like that. It's more off the cuff. And coming up with solutions for certain problems, or that's the thing about us is we love hearing from our customers, and whether it be, like I said, through an email, like, hey, thought maybe you guys could do this, nobody's making this anymore, this was a great product back in the day. And
Mhm.
if you get 10 of those emails, you're like, okay, maybe we should look at this. And
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, you're going to get a few here and there where you're like, you might sell 50 of those a year. Is it worth making an expensive mold, or,
Right.
going through the whole machining process of doing that and things like that? So it all varies, most of it comes through, customer request and, guys that we work with like Joshua and Terry
Mhm.
overall. So.
Yeah, like
So you
there'll be times that I spend on the forums, and there'll be things like people that are looking for, and I'll see recurring
Yeah.
themes,
Yeah, right.
and I'm just like, hey, Brian, do you think we could make something like this? And we're like, I don't
Yeah.
know, come up with a design and and I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, Brian, remember that thing that I talked to you about 6 months ago? How's that going?
The stack of ideas kicking around here for new products, and not only the hobby side of things, but the other divisions as well.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it gets overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
It's like my background's in fishing, right? And so that's part of the reason why I'm here. I mean, I'm not from the model aircraft world.
Mhm.
I've learned more from this guy over here than anybody. Like, I don't get me wrong, I used to race remote control cars and stuff like that in my younger days, but my mom, I mean, the wings to my first airplane are right there. So, and that's because, you know, me and Joshua have been doing this whole building class, you know, through Dubro to just kind of spark interest into people that may be on the edge of wanting to build, you know. So we've done this whole series, which has been phenomenal, and the number of comments from the viewers about how well Joshua explains things, and going back to that, you know, it's like Joshua is a very good teacher at many things. If he could teach me how to do what's that pile of six looks like back there, then he's doing all right. You know what I mean?
Well,
but
we first had to teach you how to use wax paper, Brian.
we did, and we didn't have to bring that up, Joshua, but I guess we'll do that. You know, touche. Again, like I told everybody in our build series, I made these mistakes so you didn't have to do them.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys are literally everywhere. Like when I go into any hobby shop anywhere, there's always the wall of Dubro stuff. So
sure.
Do you like I mean, obviously you guys have a pretty good handle on what the market's doing. Do you guys, for you, is it pretty much consistent all the time, or do you see, like, if we go back 4 years ago with the whole Corona thing and everything, and, you know, was there a dip there? Do you see the industry kind of going up, or is it pretty much always level?
No, it's so going back to when I first was talking, you know, about the history of Dubro. Current owner Brian Byczowski. This has always been a family business. He was basically the adopted son, right? And like I said, he spent many years working here, doing marketing, sales, things like that. He takes over January 1st, 2020.
Yeah.
Well, we all know what happens in March of 2020.
Yes.
And when he tells the story, he's like, man, I was on the phone with the old owner going, what do I do? And he's like, I don't know. I've never dealt with this before. And he was freaking
it's your
out.
problem now anyway.
I mean, rightfully so, right? But I mean, you talk about a guy who's worked his butt off his entire life and basically dumped his life savings into his future and his family's future. And now you have a worldwide pandemic and you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, you know, so obviously it was a fast intro to him on, now you got to make some critical decisions as a business owner. So, I mean, during COVID, obviously we had to have people separated and things like that. I mean, we're outside of Chicago. So I know, Anthony, you're in New York. I'm not sure where you are, Jonathan, but you know how strict the rules were in our states at that time.
Jonathan's in Canada, eh?
Yeah. So it's, it was one of those things like, how do we overcome this? And it was like, you know, are we shut down completely? So we made adjustments, followed the guidelines. And I know Brian kind of crossed his fingers like this and said, let's go, let's see what happens, you know? And fortunately enough, you know, hobby industry boomed through that for the most part. And it was the same thing in the fishing industry as well as the archery industry. Anything recreational, you know, that you either got outside for or it was something you can do indoors, which hits all three aspects of our company.
Exactly.
It was actually a blessing in disguise. So we did really well. I will say, like, last year was better than 2020 and 2021. So, I mean, you know, it does go in waves like this. And the comment that I've learned since I've been here is, you know, I guess they've been saying in this office here that the hobby industry is dying since 1982 or something, you know, but it keeps going like this. So, I mean, I get that. And you know, like I said, the reassuring thing is you do have some younger folks coming into the hobby. Um, you know, maybe it's because of all the accessibility to the ready to fly planes. And then eventually they're finding Dubro, or, you know, we get a lot of guys that they retire. They used to build planes as kids. Now they got a bunch of free time on their hands and they're getting back into it, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it definitely goes in waves. But it's never really, from my understanding, hurt us in any aspect. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, obviously, you know, election years, economy, things like that all plays a role. So this year it's kind of like, okay, what's going to happen? But I mean, knock on wood, so far so good. You know, it's like no complaints there. And I
But
think that's
there's
it.
also there's another aspect too, Brian, that you sort of touched on a little bit, where we talked about this at Toledo, where it sort of depends on what the industry is also doing too. It's
Sure.
not just
Yeah.
like about what's going on in people's lives, because you can have a whole series of planes from one manufacturer or another that will come out, and there'll be a bunch of people that are just like, yeah, let's get on board and let's buy this thing, but the hardware is garbage.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've known people that will buy a plane and they will literally take all the hardware and put it straight into the garbage can.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Pause for a sec.
What is that? So, to Brian, to your point, I think the industry right now, and I don't know if this is just what I'm seeing. I think for the last couple of years, I feel like we're at a peak right now
Mhm.
with everything, because this is just from what I'm seeing, and kind of, I've always wanted to kind of do a hobby shop. Like for years, I've been wanting to do a hobby shop or some kind of hobby store. Like it's been not a dream, but something I've always wanted to do. I've always had envy for the one hobby shop that I have by me.
Sure.
But what I'm seeing now, going back to your conversation about the ebbs and flows, is I think social media is having a lot to do with kids wanting to get into it, and even people in their 20s and 30s wanting to get into it, right? They watch a video of Jonathan building this badass jet and then taking it out and flying it, and they're like, that's cool, I want to go do that. You know what I mean? And then a lot, and as much as people hate the drones, I've seen a lot of people go from buying a camera drone to then getting into FPV drones, to then getting into planes and wings, to then building, a balsa plane and getting more in depth in the hobby, and then going from there. I'm seeing a lot of people right now transition from EDFs and those types of jets to turbines.
Yeah.
They're going smaller turbines. They're doing maybe a foam conversion turbine as their first turbine, and then they're going into the bigger turbines. I feel like there's an influx in the turbine market right now. I feel like that market is growing leaps and bounds. There's more manufacturers, I feel like, coming out with nicer jets. So
I see the same thing too. Like I get multiple emails a day now. And it's the question is purely, hey, I'm buying my first jet, or what jet should I buy? Or, that's the preface of pretty much all of those emails. It's growing more and more. So.
Right. I'm seeing it also, and it's crazy. I'm seeing it on the FPV side. I'm seeing, so like, I have a small channel, right? But what my stuff is all about is I take traditional airplanes, warbirds and stuff like that, and I can't fly line of sight anymore. I've been flying FPV now for almost 10 years that I just can't fly line of sight anymore. Like, it's bad. I'm so used to being in the cockpit that now I lose orientation like really fast. Talk about crashing. That's my nickname, is Crash. But I'm having people reach out to me now saying, hey, I've been thinking about, and these people have been flying for years, long-time hobby members, people in their 50s, 60s, and I'd say 50s, 60s, not really much older than that, reaching out to me going, hey, I'm interested in putting FPV on a plane on my Cub. How do I go about doing that? And I'm getting a bunch of emails of people asking me how to do that. So that is starting to kind of grow a little bit too. People who didn't traditionally like the FPV part of it are going, hey, you know what? it might be pretty cool to fly my plane from the cockpit. So, and I'm starting to see more of that as well. I actually just had a bunch of those conversations literally this week, you know? So
I have a lot of people ask me about it, and I tell them I think it's cool technology. I tried it, and it's just not my jam. And
right,
I think it's great that people are willing to step into something that they're unfamiliar with, but it's a hobby. Like,
right,
Mhm.
shouldn't that be like the point?
right,
Yeah.
And that's the message I usually convey. It's like, if you want to try it, try it.
right,
Worst that can happen is you don't like it. Sell the stuff off and reinvest in the hobby.
right,
Yeah.
But just to dismiss it because it's something that you don't like, I think is a little foolish. I think that's the way drones were, or multicopters back then, as they were called. They were dismissed because it was like this invasion on the hobby, and
yeah,
I honestly never felt that way about them. I just thought, it's interesting technology. It's a different way to fly. Not my thing,
right,
Hmm.
right,
and I let it go with that.
It's funny because I could probably give you scenarios in all three divisions of our company where you have situations like that. Like right
oh
now
yeah,
in the fishing world, electronics is the thing with forward facing sonar. Should it be okay? Should it not? And, nobody wins that argument. In archery, it's crossbows. Like, oh, they're not traditional bow shooters. Why are they shooting crossbows? That's like cheating. You might as well shoot a gun. I mean, dude, who cares? As long as somebody's getting out there enjoying themselves, like
Yeah.
Joshua is 100% right. And,
Yeah.
but back to the business side of things. So hobby shops, we've seen a lot of hobby shops die off, which
right,
is
Yeah.
very unfortunate.
yeah,
Right. And that's probably basically because of the internet and things like Amazon and whatever. But I will say, at NERSA this past year,
what's
Brian,
what's NERSA before you?
so, National Retail Hobby Association, I believe is the correct.
Okay,
Um,
continue.
so they do a big show in Vegas, and it's all the manufacturers and distributors show up, and then people that own hobby shops come and they see the new products for the upcoming year, maybe place some orders, things like that, or pick up a new company to distribute it, right? And Brian, our owner, has gone to that show specifically for the past X amount of years. And he said this past year was probably one of the busiest shows. But not only that, you see a lot of folks our age or even younger who are new hobby shop owners or opening hobby shops. And hobby shops are slightly making a comeback. So that's nice to see,
Yeah,
I think those hobby shops are important at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, granted, business side of things, like we always try to promote, like go to your local hobby shop, go to the distributor or hobby shop, go through distributor. Like, it's like that old saying, we all work together, we all succeed. And, it's not like, I mean, yeah, direct to consumer is great,
right,
but you're not going to survive directly off that, on the hobby side of things, our products are distributed worldwide. I mean, you can go into a hobby shop in Germany, you're going to find
your mic
Your
just
mic
got muted.
cut out.
Yeah,
Mike for a second. You go to a hobby shop in Japan, I mean, you're going to find Dubro products in there.
Wow.
pretty cool.
I mean, it's one of those things, man. It's
Piggybacking off
distributors
of
like that. They're super important.
John's question he asked before about the products. When he was asking that question, I had a question about the opposite side of that. So you get feedback and you're always revisiting products and you're coming out with new products. how often do you have, because you guys have a lot of products. I mean, your SKUs are just, I would be like a nervous Nelly owning a business that had that many SKUs, to be honest with you. That's just crazy. How often do you guys have to revisit the product line and go, hey, this thing's been made for 20 years. It's not doing great. Let's kill it. Like, is that something you guys have to do on a regular basis, or?
I'm sorry, man. My headphones cut out on me, so I didn't hear your question. I apologize.
Are you good now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
yes,
now?
sir. I can hear you.
So what I was asking was, how often do you have to go through and obviously you revisit and make new products? How often do you have to go through and kill products that have been around that aren't, maybe as the technology is changing, right? Like you're seeing a lot less gas and nitro and more electric now, right? At least that's what I've been seeing a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you certainly see more electric nowadays, but there's still a lot of folks still building glow and gas plants. It's I mean, our fuel tanks are like one of our hottest items. And obviously you're not putting that in an electric plane.
Right.
You may build a Camelback out of one. I know a guy that did that, but I mean, you certainly always have products that eventually, don't move anymore because certain things change, or maybe it's not as useful.
Right.
I mean, in the past 2 years that I've been here, I think we've might have discontinued one or two hobby items.
Okay.
So it's not like, oh boy, we got to kill 50 SKUs this year. You know what I mean? But it's something that like you kind of keep an eye on, or even too, like it may be something that got discontinued back in the day, but now there's a resurgence of need for that. So you bring it back,
like chromies.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The chrome tires. I mean, there's a few instances where we've brought things back, on the hobby side, fishing side, even the archery side.
So then the second question is, you were talking about the molds and like how you guys have to, do inject. Do you guys make the molds too, or do you get that?
So currently the molds are made out of house by a guy that's been basically building our molds for the past, I have no idea, probably 20 years, something like that. The molds are currently made out of house. However, Brian's son just graduated high school. He's going to school to be a machinist. So we recently brought in a Swiss CNC mill here. So that makes a lot of our smaller parts that we had outsourced locally here. So we're doing that in-house now. But one of the parts of his future education is actually making plastic injection molds.
Because molds are crazy. I've done so much research on molds because I had a product I wanted to make, and molds are just like, that's just a whole crazy world that just is excessive for no reason. Like
it's interesting, right? Because, and you gotta think about it this way, like, all right, we sell hinges in 12 packs. I couldn't even begin to tell you how many of those 12 packs we sell a year. Not only that, but some of those other industries we talked about, they'll call and order 10,000 of them at a time.
Wow.
So you're putting like 10,000 hinges in a bag and putting it in a box and shipping it to India or, Florida or Canada or who knows where, right? So, I mean, especially like swivel ball links, if I had to guess, and this is probably a low ball guess, we probably sell in the area of like 100 to 150,000 ball links a year, if not more. And I would almost guess it's probably twice that, right? Because you're putting them in all the planes, remote control cars,
Yeah.
drones, jets, but then robotics is a huge thing for swivel ball links,
Yeah.
things like that.
With swivel ball links, you get such accurate movements with so little slop that it's a very highly desirable item.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's a high wear item either.
Right.
So it's going to last. It's a very robust system to deal with. So there's demand for it, not just in the hobby. And like there's a reason why they sell so many of them.
Well,
right?
So with that being said, right, if you're making or selling that many a year, you need something that can obviously make that plastic housing for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, it's like, obviously we've had those molds for years. They're still going strong. Maybe once in a while you got to change springs or change an ejector pin or something like that. But if my memory serves me correctly, in each cycle, you're shooting, it's either 12 or 18 at a time of the plastic sleeves. Now, with bringing the Swiss CNC in-house, the actual ball is made here in-house, whereas it used to literally be made 3 blocks away at a machine shop up the road. So, it's things like that where it's like, molds are crazy. They are not cheap, but you got to think about the longevity you're going to get out of that.
Yeah.
So.
I've been shell shocked by the whole thing. It's just kind of crazy. So last question, then I'll turn over to John, and maybe we'll attack Josh a little bit and ask him a bunch of questions. What's that plane you're building? What is that?
So that's a old school Model Works Minuet.
Okay.
So Mark Lannerman, we sell his kits on our website. Me and Joshua, I should say, I cornered Joshua and said, "Hey, you're going to do this." I'm just kidding. I asked him, but we started this master class, and I'm like, "Hey, I can build this plane along with the show, and obviously it'll help me learn some things along the way, because if not, it used to be, hey, Joshua, what is this guy talking about? I have no clue what this is, And
it's very true.
Yeah,
it really is.
Hey, I wouldn't lie, but so it's an old school Model Works. It's a laser cut kit, balsa kit. Kind of a older style plane.
You picked that as your first plane. You picked the balsa plane as your first plane.
I'm that guy that, like, if you're going to do something, you might as well go all in.
I have a love-hate relationship with balsa. That's my thing. So
my hate part of that relationship is the amount of CA glue that ends up on my fingertips.
that is part of it. But I started way back in the 80s. My dad was into planes and building and stuff, and that's kind of where, and I was into cars and stuff. I always loved everything kind of remote control. Long story short, we spent, I don't know, a year building a plane, and first crash, it was, toothpicks. Yeah. And then we did it again, and first crash was toothpicks. And after that, I was like, I'm done with. So then I tried revisiting it a couple of years ago. With these ARF kits now that they come out with the balsa ARF kits, they're nice, and they're affordable, and you don't have to spend 6 months building the thing. I picked up an OMP Bighorn. Nice plane. Yeah. It's a little hard to fly FPV because it's very light and powerful and kind of squirrely. And I got it up. First flight, everything was kind of cool, and second flight, I punched it too hard off the line, and it just went straight up in the air and kind of flipped over itself, because that plane will go instant vertical. And being in the goggles, you're not ready for that. You just see sky, and you're like, "Uh-oh, where am I? What direction?" And it just came down, and then I remembered the balsa splinters. They all came back to haunt me because they were just.
As they say, when flying inverted, down is up and up is expensive.
Yeah, it was not great, and I will say that plane it wasn't bad. I think it was under $300. Came with everything needed to fly except for receiver. It is a good looking plane. I get the bright green one. I was kind of sad because it's a really good looking plane. It's just so that's it for Balsar and me. We're done for a little bit now. So
Ryan, you said it's the Javelin that you're building. Is that right?
No, the Minuet. It's
I'm just on
I
the
don't-
site here looking. So
Yeah, it's not on the Dubro website, but it's on old school Model Works website.
Okay, cool.
So,
awesome.
yeah.
It's
it's a
very
cool little
reminiscent
plane.
of a Blériot.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's an old French style, World War I style airplane.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when's the goal to have that done and flying?
Tomorrow maybe.
Next year.
My goal is to hopefully have it done and flying before summer is over this year.
Cool.
I definitely won't have it done for Nats when I'm down there, but my goal is to have it flying before snow starts to fly.
Good.
Yeah.
Actually, let me rephrase that. My plan is to have it up and flying before deer season starts. So I got till like middle of September.
Yeah. Awesome. Joshua, how long have you been in the hobby for?
Well, I started in the hobby as a kid. I started flying Cox 049 control line planes. Started to dabble a little bit in radio control, but I come from a very large family, 11 kids, and so we didn't have much money.
Wow.
And around the same time, I discovered girls. So funds went elsewhere. But then as I was coming to an end of college, I missed the hobby a lot. I always had a fascination with aviation history, and I started getting back into the hobby through Real Flight, and had Real Flight started doing custom Real Flight models. So I was doing a whole bunch of those custom airplanes, because all the airplanes that I'm interested in are the weird ones that no one's ever going to manufacture.
Yeah.
Like what?
And
you got to name a
like
couple.
SB2C Helldiver, like the Saab B-17, the Polikarpov I-16. I mean,
the Helldiver. I agree with you on that, and I don't know why manufacturers don't. I think that is a great plane.
I know there've been a couple of Dauntlesses, but like dive bombers, to me, if you look at the history of dive bombers, those guys had way more guts than those guys.
Oh my god,
flying fighters.
I talk about that all the time. The huevos that those World War II guys had. You're gonna take this tin can. You're gonna fly it at that ship that's shooting
straight at a battleship or a carrier,
and you're gonna drop this bomb that's strapped to the bottom of your plane that can be shot while you're diving. Yeah,
and then you're gonna pull out of that dive that's nearly straight down and hope
that
the wings don't clap together. So that's how I got really back into the hobby as an adult. When I first got back to the hobby, I started with a Park Zone Corsair, and my first build was an Aerodrome RC 01, that's O with an umlaut, 01 Tummelisa from Sweden. It's a beautiful biplane, has elliptical wingtips, not round or square. I'd never seen an airplane like that before with elliptical wingtips. It's beautiful. And just fully detailed to the nines, and I was instantly hooked back into the hobby. So I've been doing builds of various kinds ever since. I've done a Bugatti 100P racer, completely built from scratch with as much scale fidelity as possible. I've done essentially flight metal covered P-47 that looks like a flying disco ball. Scratch built a quarter scale Fokker D8 from foam board from the dollar store, but it's all scale stuff. Trying to just have fun with scale and learn about the history and just share something.
Right. do you build any of that scale stuff for like competitions at any point? Have you done any of that?
No, I like I said, I am not a competitive person at all.
Right, right.
I just me in sports, we don't get along. But even in the hobby, I'm just like, look, if you want to compete, that's fine. Whatever makes you happy. But for me, I would much rather sit in my tent and let's have a conversation and talk about building in the shop. That's
Yeah.
my jam.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up the Park Zone Corsair. I actually lawn darted one about a year ago, and it was one of my favorite planes.
Yeah, it's great flying plane.
Yeah, yeah. I actually still have. I still have I found a Mustang, a Park Zone Mustang, new in box, at a hobby
Nice.
shop. Yeah, last year, and I took it apart and kind of did my own little custom jammy to it. Oh, oh boy. I have them all like stacked on top of each other right now. I'm running out of space, being like 50 airplanes. So I kind of redid her and made her into my own little scheme. I got my FPV set up on her, and
Yeah.
That's
this is
cool.
one of my
Cool.
favorite planes to fly. It's just such a nice, park flyer. I could throw it in my car and go to the field and fly a couple flights and have fun with it. It's fast now though.
I think that the only exception to a nice flying Park Zone airplane would be the SR-71.
Yeah.
I've
But-
heard nothing but bad stuff about that SR-71. It's super cool, but why they released it under Park Zone branding, I don't know. Because Park Zone, like all the Park Zones, just fly so well.
So
Yeah.
the other problem with my Mustang is I put a that's like a 3S 1200 or it's a small bay for a small pack. So I put a 4S ESC and motor in it, and now what happens if you do like a full throttle, full run pass at probably 100 miles per hour for that tiny little plane, it starts to get really squirrely. The wings start flapping.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it gets a little nutty. It's fun to
Yeah,
fly, but
I've got one of those E-Flight Rare Bears, and it's almost
yeah.
the same way. Those things are just they fly on rails. The Rare
Yeah.
Bears
Yeah.
just don't care.
yeah,
But you can overspeed them. I've seen it done. It's really hard. You got to put them on 6S, but
Yeah.
they go like stink.
it gets squirrely. It gets a little scary sometimes. I don't want to crash that one. I had another one, another Park Zone. I don't, for some reason, I feel like the Park Zone Mustangs are nicer than the newer E-Flight Mustangs, and they're a little bit smaller. They're 1100 millimeters, so
Yeah.
they're not 1200, so they're easy to hand launch.
Well, they're also starting to shove things like retracts and lights and all these
Yeah.
other things, and that makes them heavier. So
Right.
there's a performance hit to adding weight. There
Yeah.
always is.
Yeah. So I don't want to crash that one because I had one before that, and I ended up crashing it, and I was really sad. So I try to just enjoy that one. It's kind of like my trailer queen, and it's funny. It's a funny little plane, but I love it. I took it all apart, painted it. I was nutty with it, but it's an awesome little plane.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good times. You have anything that you're working on right now? I know you posted a video that you just finished a project, right?
What is Joshua not working on is the real
Yeah.
question.
Well, what are you working on that is worth mention? That's something that is special.
Well, I mean, right now I'm preparing to go to Summer Nats because Dubro is the main sponsor for Summer Nats for the AMA. So I've been brushing up the Saab B-17 that I built. That's a dive bomber. For
Yeah.
those who don't know,
Mhm.
I like dive bombers. The designer of the model is Jerry Bates. He's since released the plans officially, but my plans were given to me from Jerry at a time when they were still in prototype phase, and he scaled them down to 7th scale for me. So it's still a pretty good sized model, but it's not as big as he originally had designed it. So there's still some teething issues that I've had to work through, but the model is done. I had a little bit of a repair I had to do. Took it to Ceph and had a short in one of the retracts. So that's been repaired. There's some additional details that I've done. I put in a direction finding antenna on the belly. I still want to put an antenna mast on the canopy on top. A couple little details here and there. that I'd like to have ready for summer gnats, but mostly I'm trying to learn my sequence for flying at summer gnats. That's most of my build / time that I'm spending right now, aside from wrapping up the minuets for the giveaway. I'm building 2 of these models, and they're like more or less basically the same. One's gas, one's glow. So the fuselages are done; they're ready to go. So it's all coming down to the wings. I'm covering the wings right now, but there's way more details to come. There's rib stitching, there's rib pinking, there's going to be a paint scheme. I mean, there's more stuff to come, and I've only got a few more weeks to get it all done. So
Yeah, I was
a
going to
lot.
say that. When is Nats?
July, right
Wow.
after the
Yeah.
4th.
Wow. Wow.
So
Okay,
yeah,
you're both going to be there? You're both going to be at Nats?
I'll be there for the whole event. Brian, you're just going to be there for a day, right?
Yeah, I'll be there for a day, and then I have to head to a fishing trade show in Orlando,
Okay.
straight from Indiana.
And I'm guessing since you guys are sponsoring it, you're going to have a booth there?
We don't have a booth. We provide a bunch of stuff for all the pilots that compete. Get like a gift box essentially from all the sponsors of the event and things like that. Joshua's my booth. He's got spare parts, so if you crash on that flight, see Joshua. But
I'm putting together something called the Dubro Boo Boo Box.
yeah,
Cool. Band-Aids and all?
yeah.
That's funny. That is funny. So, John, do you have any extra questions?
No, I'm just cruising through your site, Joshua. It's
He's
pretty
shopping
cool.
right now.
Some of the projects you got going on here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean, I don't really build stuff that is, clickbait. It's all just weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of value in your channel. Don't
Yeah, and
undersell it.
a lot of it's instructional. So there's
Right.
quite a bit of talking too, because you have to explain things.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not very, entertaining. I'm not an entertainer. I'm an educator.
Right.
Is what I like to consider myself as. And a video is able to say a lot more when you're explaining something, as opposed to typing it all out in word form, which takes so much time.
Yeah.
To both do and to read. So
Yeah.
a video just is a much more efficient medium.
Yeah.
For sure.
We're still I'll still put a link for your YouTube channel in the description.
Oh, thanks.
As well as Dubro. And Brian, I know I still owe you that paperwork. We were talking about this before the podcast. I'm kind of working on figuring out this whole 3D printed plane thing that I have going on.
Yeah.
And I'm working through all kinds of trial and error. We were talking about, 3D printing tires versus getting tires from Dubro. Some of the planes have different hardware. I'm trying to get it down to kind of like using the same hardware for all it. So it's that's been where a lot of my aggravation and time is coming from. I'm trying to do something that it's going to be very hard to scale and do, but I think there's a need for it. So
yeah, right on, man.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll offer up to your guys' listeners too. I'll create a promo code. You guys could put in let's just do FPV all caps, and it'll save you 15% off your order, and we'll make it good for like a month.
That's awesome. That's very, very
Cool.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
John
problem.
had a whole list of stuff he needed for jets, so he'll probably
we'll get you squared away, Jonathan.
Yeah.
I'm sure you go through a lot of hardware and stuff on those jet builds, right? I mean,
yeah, it's you guys kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's one of those scenarios where a lot of the sports jets we get, they generally come with good hardware packages, especially now.
Yeah.
But a lot of our scale planes that we deal with, we're keeping the Sullivan Golden Clevis, but everything else gets changed out, right? Like,
Sure.
we're putting your guys' ball links on there and all that stuff. So it's it's pretty normal. So
yeah, that's the one thing Dubro is known for quality stuff, I will say, because I have a couple of their, not just their hinges and stuff, but their heavy duty link sets. that I have that on one of my composite wings because the set that it came with was laughable. And it's a fast wing, right? It's probably 150 mile per hour wing, and last thing I want is a control surface to break, on a 2 control surface plane. So,
and the last thing we want is for you to call and go, "Hey, I just crashed my $20,000 jet."
Right.
Because your hinge failed,
Right.
So I mean, that's something I didn't mention is like a lot of our plastic parts, that's all virgin plastic. So it's never been molded into anything. And there's a reason for that. The more you mold a plastic and recycle it and remelt it, the weaker it becomes. So, that's always the reason for that, right? Is, we know guys that like Joshua who will spend a whole year building a plane and then go out, fly it, crash it, and we don't want to be the result of that crash because one of our parts failed. Yeah. We want Joshua to crash because he did something wrong.
Dumb thumbs.
The hinges. I don't know if a lot of people know about the hinges or use the hinges, especially on like the foam builds, right? A lot of these foam ARFs, they come with foam hinges where like the foam is just a little bit thinner and it holds the control surface on. Yeah. If it's a plane that I like and I've spent money on and I'm going to keep, what I end up doing is I cut the control surface off. I cut that thin foam layer and I'll put in the vinyl hinges because it's just right. It makes it so much better. It makes the control surface function so much better. You get more throw and stuff out of it. So, and it's super easy. It's an upgrade that doesn't take a lot of time to do. Right.
Yeah.
It's an upgrade that takes a razor blade, make a couple of slits in the foam, use a little CA glue, get that in there, and you're good to go. So it's a relatively cheap upgrade, and it'll save you from you flying and a control surface comes off from a foam hinge.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I build these works of art. I like to use my tagline, "Flying Works of Art," because everybody who builds a work of art, and I look at high quality hardware as part of your insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people anymore rely on a lot of the electronics like safe technology, for example, the gyros and stuff like that. But that's only going to work as well as your hardware works.
Yeah.
If you've got garbage hardware in your model, that stuff can give way because you're dealing with a lot of forces and counter torque and things like that. And if you don't have good hardware, what good is it?
Right.
So it's just part of that stacking up your insurance policy of building something that you love, that you want to keep around, that looks amazing, and you put a lot of hard work into it.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It's time and money. That's, so guys, thank you. We're right around that hour mark. John, are you good? You got anything else for them?
Yeah, no, thanks guys. Appreciate you coming on and joining the podcast. It's been a pleasure meeting you guys and talking with you and learning a bit more about Dubro and who you guys are. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Same here.
Thanks for having us. Thank you for the promo code.
Yeah.
Really, for the viewers, that's awesome. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, gents. Have a good night. Josh, I'll talk to you
soon,
guys.